I mean, honestly, like right now, because like we don't even have a question of where the ceiling is. And like, this is the chance to like make history. Like no one has done it like we're doing it with like American manufacturing and hiring people and like literally making the products downstairs. We've obviously seen, companies that manufacture in China grow this fast, but like you don't see it happen here in the United States. So we're setting the example that like in 3 years, to go from 3 years to like 55 employees and like the top line that we're doing and making it respectful and profitable at the same time, this is the one chance.
Welcome to the podcast.
Wow, where am I?
It's kind of wild. Been wanting to have you on for a while, like since the beginning, but we finally made it happen.
Yeah, it's crazy how we share a wall, but like we have zero time.
It's insane. For people that don't know, you're my business partner. You do the marketing around here, but I've had a lot of people ask me like what your background was and whatnot. So I want to go back to where people have asked like did we know each other when we were kids or whatever? So like where you grew up.
Yeah.
So why don't you talk a little bit about like childhood, what you did in high school and kind of what growing up as a kid in Pennsylvania, right?
Yep, in Pennsylvania. So I grew up like right in the heart of the Appalachian Mountains. A really small town, Johnstown, Pennsylvania. We're a steel mill town, so I lived in one of the suburbs there. Growing up, kind of like your typical Pennsylvania, we definitely weren't city kids. Yeah. We definitely weren't country kids. We were kind of like somewhere stuck in between, if we weren't partying in a basement, we were partying out in the, what we would call like the strip mines or the bony dumps or, go find old logging roads and stuff like that and go set up camp. And, we had a lot of fun.
What'd your parents do?
So my mom, most of her life, she was either a waitress or she was actually an optical assistant for a while.
Okay.
My parents had me pretty young. So I think they were in like their early 20s. I spent a lot of time, with my grandparents. I would have to say like my grandfather was probably the most influential person, in my life growing up as a kid.
In what way?
I lived with him, early, from like 1 to 5, and then my mom remarried. Then, I lived with my mom and my stepdad, but then I still always kept residency, at my grandparents' house.
They were close then, right, to your mom's?
Yeah, they were real close. I mean, I would literally ride my bike in between the places. So
what'd your grandfather do?
So my grandfather spent, I think he did like 16 years in the Navy. He worked on the ship, which was really interesting because you have the surface grinder downstairs.
Yeah.
In your shop. Like that stuff that he would work on. Then he also worked, I think he was like a radar tech and stuff like that. So he did that for, 16 years. And then after that, he joined the post office. And he was just a mechanical, I don't want to say engineer, but he was the guy that just fixed all the machines.
Okay.
So I spent a lot of time down at the local post office, running around. It was interesting to watch him do his thing. And then after that, he worked another 10 or 15 years with lottery. So he only worked for like 3 companies, but
yeah.
So
he was kind of a father figure a little bit.
Yep.
Yeah. What did you, when you got like into high school, were you into sports or what kind of extracurricular stuff did you do besides partying?
I think partying came first, but high school, I didn't play a lot of sports. I ran track, did a bunch of jumps, the jumping stuff, triple jump, high jump, long jump, but that was more, just to kind of like hang out with my buddies. I spent a lot of time, just being outdoors. I used to, BMX, and then the other big thing we did was snowboard. I mean, I had a full season pass snowboarding, for a snowboard at Seven Springs before I had a driver's license. So I would just hitch rides with the older guys in high school, and would skip school. I literally almost flunked out my senior year from skipping school too much.
Yeah,
to go snowboarding. So we did a lot of snowboarding, and then I'm trying to think of really the.
Did you have jobs?
Yeah, I mean that's the one thing is I started working at the age of 13. like 40 hours a week during the summer. My mom always joked, or we always joked, that was my form of daycare.
Yeah.
So, I mean, my first job was 13 years old. My mom dropped me off at the job site and I was hauling shingles.
Yeah.
And I did that for a couple months. And then we started tarring, driveways and things like that. So I worked for a great uncle who owned a bunch of businesses. And I really do think like that's one of the people that influenced like kind of who I am today now, is like watching, my great uncle Joel, build all these different businesses. And he was in real estate, and he started, he would just start companies out of nowhere. And like, that's what my job was kind of. So I would call him in the morning, be like, hey, where am I going to go?
Right.
One morning, I might be, like I said, like tarring driveways, for one of his rental complexes. The next morning I'd be working at a car wash. The next morning delivering pizzas, literally. Yeah. And then, he owned like, 450 storage units. So he's like managing storage units and things like that.
Yeah. 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 Just kind of that, those kind of people that just, they just get it done. I mean, even when my dad moved to Lincoln, he was a chimney sweep. He was a mechanic. He had the backhoe. You can pull that thing forward too. There you go. I just think there's people out there that just figure out a way to make it.
Right.
So it's like whatever that is, whatever the opportunity seems to be, or, seems like people just figure out a way to make a living. Sounds like that's kind of how he was.
Yeah, exactly. And I think he was the only one on my mom's side who actually went to college too, up until I went too. So it was interesting to watch him make decisions. And it was actually, I actually watched him fail a couple times, and I also watched him make it, big too. I think watching that, because I worked for him from the age 13 the whole way up until about 20, until I started getting, design jobs in school.
What kind of grade did you get in high school?
Oh, horrible. I'm not even gonna. So it was interesting. Like I had a really rough time in elementary school, a really, really rough time in middle school. That was probably my hardest years. I would love to try to dig up some of my old like report cards and stuff like that. And I knew they were a lot of D's, a lot of C's, and then like art was like 110%.
Really?
Yeah. So that's like, so then all through high school too was the same way. My freshman year was like really rough, bad grades. I just found out like if I'm not interested in it, I can't focus in it. And I'm like the definition of like the C student. You know what I mean? Like I can get 100% and 110% in the things I focus on, but if I really don't feel like I'm honestly giving my time, it does go along the wayside.
I think kids get medicated for that these days, that, put on Ritalin or whatever, he's ADD or whatever. And it's like, or he's just not interested. Yeah. Like he just doesn't care. And that was me. I mean, I was the same way. Like they almost flunked me in first grade. No one flunks first grade, but like my teacher wanted to hold me back, but I just wanted to be outside on backhoes with my dad.
Right.
Like I just wanted to be out in the dirt. I didn't want to be sitting at a desk in school.
No.
I could stay focused on the stuff I wanted to stay focused on, but I was miserable all the way through school. I hated school. I just didn't see the point in it. I enjoyed shop class. I enjoyed building gun cabinets and breadboards and whatever the hell we would build in shop class, but I had zero, if I couldn't apply it to like something that I thought, of course sometimes I guess you think, or at least I thought in high school, like I had kind of like my path in life figured out. I was going to take over my parents' excavation business, and I was going to make some knives on the side. Like that was going to be my life. So why the hell am I in English lit?
Right. 100%.
So I just kind of was a little dickhead and didn't apply myself. But, it's interesting. I've heard this quote. I need to actually find it because I'm supposed to speak at this high school graduation thing, and I want to say it, but it's like, A students, they're always going to do fine. They're going to be your doctors and lawyers and whatever. And your C students figured out a way to like get through school, and basically manipulate the system to just get good enough grades to get through school. But down the road, the A students will probably work for the C students. Yeah,
100%. And that's like, it's crazy you bring that up, because like I've always trying to think of like, what can I do outside of MKC? Like what could my philanthropy thing be? And there's something exactly what you're talking about, because especially in my early years in elementary school and then going into middle school, I started getting pushed into remedial classes. I mean, I'm in literally sitting next to kids, they were definitely on the spectrum. They were definitely, a lot of like, and you could tell too, there was probably like worse family economics that were causing a lot of these students to not have good grades. But I think it was like, I probably should have been diagnosed with ADD and like all that stuff. And I kind of thank my lucky stars that we didn't have health insurance a lot of time so I can get actually diagnosed.
Yeah. Because that could have really suppressed your creative mind later in life.
It definitely could have, without a doubt. And that's what I would love to find a way to give back and like go talk to those kids, because those kids are because like I was in those classes getting beat down, being like, you're not good at taking tests, you're not going to be anything.
Yes.
And I just wanted to be those kids and be like, no, there's a second avenue. Like you're not your memory.
Right.
Like you are like, can you figure out? Can you read the room?
Right.
Like that's one thing that like people really underestimate is like, can you walk into a room and read the room, see who the person is that's making the deals, see that. And like, there's just so many positions out there that, when you're going through school, all you hear about is like what you said, doctors, lawyers, dentists,
right.
things like that. Like, and then like people talk about being a mechanic or, an engineer maybe, but like, we were having that conversation before, like, I met someone who's making millions of dollars just selling furniture to casinos.
Yeah.
Like there's just so many different avenues that are not your typical routes that guiding counselors push.
Or you can be, where I ended up in later in life, long after high school, was like being a lineman, or, you would hear people, this would bother me when I was in school, but like, if you don't do things right, you're going to end up being a ditch digger. Well, my dad was a ditch digger, and I thought he's my hero.
Yeah.
So like, what's the problem with being a ditch digger? Like he created a hell of a company,
right,
and built a hell of a life being a ditch digger. Like that's not something to be ashamed of. In fact, actually, a bunch of you in here should consider being ditch diggers.
Right.
It's a damn good career, So it was kind of disparaged, like literally how I grew up, or like what we did growing up, or what I did for a day job as a high school kid was literally disparaged as, just a ditch digger. And so I think we're saying the same thing, whether it's an electrician, a plumber, whether it's in the crafts or then there's different sides of business that you're like in business, but it takes a special kind of savviness that maybe a more analytical person can't necessarily read. There's different kinds of people out there. And that's when I went and talked to the Drummond High School kids, I was telling them like, what I wished is that I had applied myself a little bit more and been a little bit less of an asshole and just like learned a little bit more. Cause like when I decided to become a lineman, then the first thing they made me do was take a math test. I was like, well, shit, I should have actually paid some attention. Like,
yeah,
it's like, I told those kids, you don't have to go into trigonometry. You don't have to go into physics, but like maybe pay attention to that basic algebra or pay attention to that basic math, pay attention to your basic writing. I tell my kids all the time, with social media, or with what you do with MKC, you're literally writing every single day for the world to see. So like, I should have probably paid a little more attention in writing.
I wish I would have.
So it's like, if you could get those kids to be like, maybe instead of C- students, like even C+.
Yes.
Or, like just applying yourself just a little bit more, paying attention just a little bit more, and understanding maybe learn how to study just a little bit more. But also, like, if they aren't going to go to college or they don't have plans for that someday, they're not a failure.
Right, 100%. And it's not even like, hey, just like do a little better. It's like, understand the situation you're in, and like, listen, guys, school sucks. Right. There's no way around it. And like, this is the game you're playing right now. Now, like, how can you get a B or an A? And like, honestly, just like, how can you just trick the system? And I hate to say it. I'm not saying go out and cheat.
Right.
But I mean, just like, is this like, hey, like you cram the night before. Like you might not retain everything, but at the end of the day, like really the school is set up for you to take a test and get a better grade.
Get through it.
Because at the end of the year, they're not making you prove what you learned in September.
Right.
They're just making you learn what you learned the month before. So like you just have to take it week by week. And the reason why I say that is too, because like I had a major shift, my sophomore and junior year of high school, because I was applying myself in art. Art was the only thing I was good at. And like, I took a really like strong grasp of graphic design at a very, very young age. And I've always wanted to be an admin. Like I always wanted to be in advertising specifically. Like I wanted my art to like create a sale. Like I wanted to do something, and then there was a direct trigger to what I created. Like, so it's just like, I didn't want to be a painter as much as I loved painting and sculpture, and I won a bunch of awards in like high school and all that stuff. I've always wanted to like at that time, I always like wanted to design billboards or like the side of like Mack trucks or like.
Why do you think that was like, why did that trip your trigger at that point?
I think it's because I was obsessed with like Warhol. Like I was obsessed with the people who are mass producing art at a large scale. So the idea was like, what's the easiest way for everyone to see what I was creating? And I think, and there was something to like, almost persuading masses that was interesting to me. Like I want to be able to sell something. I want everyone to know about it. And like, we'll probably get into this later, but like, where we are today is like where I've always wanted to be, is like, I'm using my art to better other people's lives. So it's like I'm selling a product, and this is the first time in like my life that I'm selling a product that I'm 100% confident in. Like I do not feel guilty about selling someone a Blackfoot.
Right.
Like I know that knife is going to make their hunt, their life, whatever, it's going to improve their lifestyle. They're not buying a piece of consumerism that they're going to throw away in 3 to 4 months.
Right.
So I think there's something to that it just always kind of attracted me to this. And that's the weird thing, is like, I've always been on this plane. Like I've never kind of deviated. I never wanted to go be a lawyer or a doctor or anything like that. It's always been like, I've always wanted to be in like business development with the edge of creativity and advertising.
Once in high school, you started to grasp onto that. Later in high school, then did your grades all of a sudden improve? Did you start to apply?
I pretty much had to, because for some reason I was set on going to Penn State, and I knew Penn State you had to at the very, very bare minimum, you had to take trigonometry.
No.
So I mean, it's wild. I could barely do algebra. I could barely pass any of my earlier math classes, but once I knew like trigonometry was a step to something that I wanted, B+ A's.
Really?
Like literally, because like I said, like I gamified it. Like I was able to learn it and it took me a lot. I mean, like it wasn't easy. I had to get tutors and I had to like work on it and like all that stuff. But once I was able to do that, like I was able to apply myself. The funny thing was I ended up not even going to Penn State. I got in, and it chose another school for other reasons. But things like really started to shape up my senior, like my junior and senior year of high school. But
that's the thing about telling these kids, like, it's not a matter that you can't do it. It's that you're choosing not to at that moment, like
right.
Applying yourself or whatever. And, especially when I graduated high school and when I graduated in 99, a little ahead of you, but like when you graduated, like if you weren't planning on going to college, you were kind of a failure. Mm-hmm. And so I went to college, and then somebody allowed me to go to college for engineering, and I was horrible at math. I'm wondering to myself, like, how did someone not be like, it's like the guy that goes on American Idol and just like a horrendous singer, and they actually think they're good.
Yeah.
Where did somebody not step in and go like, bro,
hey,
can't let you do this. Somebody should not have allowed me to enter engineering. But I went, and I was just kind of lost in school, and it just, there again, even though I was in college, I didn't have that thing like you did that I was like confident. Because again, I'm in an engineering program, but I'm going to go run an excavation company in a tiny town. I don't need to know how to build a bridge.
Right.
So again, if I really wanted to be a bridge builder, I probably could have done it, but that's not what I wanted. And so it's just interesting how I think for kids, and I think especially young boys, man, they have to have the why. Mm-hmm. If they don't understand why, and that's where even my dad would say, like with our math teaching, he'd be like, why don't they take you out, instead of like calculating the area of a cone, my attitude was like, who gives a shit? It's a cone. I don't care.
Right.
If my dad, like my dad said, why don't they take you out to my gravel pit and say, how many yards of gravel are in that pile? Well, all of a sudden I'd be like, ooh, I'm interested in like knowing how to do that. You know, if you're
Right.
going to dig a hole in the ground and you have a hole over here to fill it, how much is that? That all of a sudden starts to equate it to something.
Yeah.
You know, how many shingles is it going to take to cover this entire roof? Like, that's math I'm interested in. But when you're adding and subtracting the alphabet, I'm out.
Exactly. I was same boat. I mean, like, this is just literally you're just answering questions right at that point. Like, you're not actually solving anything. And I don't think, I had some really good teachers, but I don't think they ever really showed me what that math was for. You know, and I can't say like there's ever been math in business that have been like, man, I'm glad I learned that.
Yeah.
That I just can't Google.
I used the Pythagorean's theorem for an example. Like, I remember thinking vividly in high school, I could give a shit who Pythagorean was and what his theory is.
Yeah.
And when I became a lineman, to figure out the length of a guy wire, it was a squared plus b squared equals. Well, I didn't understand a squared was the length of the power pole. B squared was the distance on the ground, and C squared was the guy wire. Like, had they told me that, I'd been like, oh, yeah, that's interesting. I might want to know that, you know? So like, it took me till I was 30 years old to go, I do. Pythagorean was a smart guy. But so when you went to college, did you go straight into graphic design and marketing then?
Yeah. So
and you never wavered off of that. I mean, that was
never wavered,
which is rare. Most kids think they're going to go do graphic design or going to go do whatever, but they end up in other degrees. But you really stuck to it.
Yeah. So I applied to like 6 or 7 different schools, just pretty much based off of my art portfolio and all the awards I won. Like during high school, I got into all of them actually.
Really?
And then for some reason I went to Edinburgh University. It's a small state school in Erie, Pennsylvania. It had a weird reputation that made all of the New York schools that I was applying to, and I applied to places in like Baltimore and stuff like that. But Edinburgh always had this like Midwest. It was hipster before hipsters were hipsters, but like no one could explain why really good designers were coming out of this college. And the reason why is because we had 2 awesome professors there. One was Shelley Barron, one was the other one was Bridget. Like both those women like taught me how to design, and they were just like awesome, and they taught you how to think. That's the difference. Like a lot of design schools, they just teach you how to run Adobe and they teach you basic stuff, but they don't get you to think about the end goal. And that's like one thing they did really well. And college for me, like I loved college. And that's the thing is like, I'm never going to force anyone to go to college, but like I needed college because I needed to get out of Johnstown, Pennsylvania.
Yep.
Not talking shit on Johnstown, Pennsylvania, just my situation, I didn't know what a successful 25-year-old male looked like. That didn't exist in my ecosystem in that town. There probably was. I'm not saying there wasn't, but if you stayed in that town, unfortunately at that time, like it wasn't a pretty picture at all. It wasn't. It was a very, very depressing town. There wasn't a lot of job opportunities. There's always hope of the government bringing in new manufacturing to replace steel mills and coal mines, and like it was really bleak if you weren't getting out of town. And I bet you 9 out of 10 of all my friends have all moved away from Johnstown for opportunity. Right. So going to college was either college or the military. That was my only 2 choices. And my grandfather fought me like tooth and nail to not go to the military.
Oh, really?
Yeah, because he went to the military. My uncle went to the military.
This would have been like full on 9/11 days too, right? I mean, or like Iraq wartime.
Yeah, 2004.
Yeah,
like all that. I mean, that's something that I looked into and all that stuff. And I was going to do the Navy, just follow in his footsteps and all that stuff. And he really, really fought me tooth and nail because he's like, I worked too hard.
Did he say why?
Pretty much, he wanted me to be like one of the first people in like his bloodline to go to college and do something, just where you're not sacrificing your body for it. So I think he really wanted me to use my mind and stuff like that. Cause he had, he worked his entire life tooth and nail. So, which, it is what it is. So, and I think it, worked out in the end, and I have all the respect for, veterans and all that stuff too. So,
back to your awards you were winning in high school with your art, was it like hand-drawn art, or are you talking more like graphic type art, like graphic design art?
At that time, it was all paint.
Really?
A lot of paintings, a lot of sculpture, then a lot of like screen printing.
Did you ever continue on with any of that after high school, like your actual artwork?
Yeah, like all through college. So my degree is in actually fine arts. It's a fine arts with a like a focus in applied media. So the first 2.5 years of college, I really didn't do any graphic design.
We should start dropping some photos like that you might have to start painting in the shop.
God, I look back at some of my art I created in college, and I just thank my professors for not making fun of me for how self-loathing, like egotistical my art was. Like I hate the stuff I do last year, and I look back 20 years, I'm like, oh my God, lay off the emo music. You're not that cool. Like,
oh my gosh.
No, but I mean, like I said, it was fun, but like And I'm lucky. I went to college during a really cool period because it was the transition in between like fine arts and really heavy digital. I think we're still using.
It was really kind of the beginning of the internet period, frankly. I mean, and for sure pre-social media.
Yeah.
Just building up to what we now have today.
Yeah, and like even the photography classes I took were with film. Like every photo I had to take, I had to go develop that in the dark room.
When I met you, I mean, you were heavy into the photography.
Mm-hmm.
When did the photography piece enter your life? Was it in college?
So I dabbled a little bit in photography, but here's the weird thing. I've always been taking pictures. Like maybe it might not be like how you look at it, Instagram and art, but even when I was in high school, I mean, for some reason I have a 6-inch photo album of like all of our parties, the most incriminating photos possible. And thank God that like Facebook wasn't there, but I always had a camera in my hand. I was always documenting. But then through college, I started doing some other stuff, but like I really didn't get into photography until I started working professionally because I just couldn't at that time, photographers weren't that abundant. Like now, I hate to say it, like, there's a ton of photographers for every single niche. Like when I was in the fitness industry, it was hard to go find a photographer who knew how to take a photo of someone deadlifting without bad form or something that just was completely off,
right?
Brand or out, off the niche and stuff like that. So I was just like, screw it. I'm going to do it myself. I'll learn it. It's faster. And that's where like I really got into it, just pretty much like, and a lot of the positions I took in my early years were, it was like a one-man show. So it's like if I wasn't doing it, no one was.
So what was your first job out of college?
So let's start let's start with college because one thing I will have to, if anyone's listening to this and they're younger and they're going into college, like make sure you're going through your classes and all that stuff, but utilize like all of your connections in college. Like that's like one thing I did really, really well. Like I joined a fraternity. And I had my first internship in between my sophomore and junior year, which is like when you should not have an internship. I got it purely through connections in a fraternity, someone who lied about how good I was. I didn't even know how to use Photoshop.
Really?
I took the interview and it was just a bunch of like my sketches and like I kind of like did some stuff off some fake like software and all that stuff. And I got the job. They paid minimum wage back at that time, but I never used any of my interns as credit because I wanted to take classes. Like I was really stubborn about like, why would I pay to work and then pay for those credits? I was like, I'd rather go take a sociology class, an extra class. So the first job I ever got was at the Johnstown magazine, and it was literally just designing ads. So it's like a local newspaper designing, all the ads for all the different companies.
Do you have any of those ads?
Oh yeah. Yeah. I have a bunch of them. They're bad, but
Henry, you might have to put a couple over the top of this.
Yeah. I'll definitely try to dig them out, but it was cool. Cause I would work with clients and stuff with that and stuff like that. And then I went back after the summer, took my classes and all that stuff. And then, the summer between my junior and sophomore year, I had a really cool opportunity. I had a lady approach me and my one friend who was in the animation side of, he was going to school to be an animator. She's like, hey, I want to start a tech camp for kids. And what we didn't know is it was actually kids that were all on the spectrum.
Oh.
So she's like, I don't have a curriculum built, but all I know is like, there's a need for it. These kids they really attract to these skills, and they stay focused and they stay happy and like all this stuff. So it's like, I want to bring you and my partner Dave in, and he's like, I want you guys to set up the curriculum. You're going to run the summer camp. So you have to understand, I'm like 19 years old, turning 20, and some lady is like, hey, I want you to pretty much develop this business for me and figure out how to run it. Like, I'll help you with like all the other stuff, but like, you're the ones, that are going to run this camp, and the first class is in like 3 weeks.
Yeah.
And we're like, okay. So we had to go buy computers, obviously all with her credit card. We went and bought like 8 or 9 computers and like all this stuff. And we set up the curriculum, and, we had graphic design and like photography and all that stuff. And that was a really, really cool summer. I wish I didn't party so much so I could remember a lot of it, but that was one, like, it was cool to like watch those kids really, really grasp graphic design and photography and the animation side, and like, these are, some of the kids were just slightly on the spectrum. Some of them, had like, severe Asperger's and stuff like that. And it was insane to watch some of the kids that were, that had trouble functioning the first day, like in a, setting a group of guys. And like, by the end, they were literally developing video games faster than we knew what we were doing. They were literally picking it up faster. So, that's like, that was another crash course in business that just kind of happened to, like fall in my lap. And then immediately after that, during my senior year, I got my first, part-time job as a graphic designer. And that was through, a company called Compass USA. And the company I worked for was Chartwell's. And so pretty much what that was the company that would run the food service, contracts for the colleges. Okay. So a lot of people, like I think, the college here, like that's actually run by the campus. But 90% of all college campuses are run by a contracted company. The college campus just cuts them a check, or the company cuts the college campus a check, and they just operate, and if they make a profit, they make a profit. But the cool thing is what I didn't know is like I was pretty much going to get handed the brand books for like 10 or 15 different brands that were on campus, and I had to obtain those like branding standards. So crash course on graphic design and branding, like immediately.
That's cool.
Yeah. So
did you have pretty good success with that? Like come up with some pretty cool stuff, and people were happy. Yeah,
it was interesting because I had to work directly with the main manager there, like the director of the account. I mean, it's an $8 million account.
Oh damn!
It was $8 million worth of food sales over the year. Yeah. So that's a lot of chicken finger baskets.
No shit.
And stuff like that. So it was cool to kind of get into politics of the school, and that's a whole nother podcast we can have. How, I don't want to say corrupt, but how misleading state schools are when they say they're non-for-profit. Trust me, the profit is there.
A ton.
It's just how it looks like at the end of the day on the taxes. Yeah. So
go look and see how much in these schools endowment funds. I mean, oh my God.
It's ridiculous. Yeah. But so that's my senior year, and I graduated in 2008. Obviously, what happened in 2008? Yeah,
housing crash, market.
Yep, the entire world came crashing down. So I was the intern there. Or graphic designer, however you want to put that. They pitched as an intern, but it was just a paid graphic design position. The director of the account came to me when I graduated and goes, hey, your current senior, like my boss at the time, he's like, she's kind of on the upper end of the salary. She's not really holding her weight. Like, we're thinking about firing her. I was like, whoa. He's like, if I offered you the job, would you start Monday?
Really?
Yeah. So literally that was the week I was like literally about to go put on a cap and gown. Yeah. And I was like, 2008, everyone's just like, I don't know what I'm going to do.
Everyone's getting cut or can't find jobs.
Yeah, exactly. And they, respectfully, they probably paid me a quarter of what they were paying her, but so literally, graduated and then, right there, boom, started as I was a marketing manager in charge of like an $8 million account. I had 2 or 3 employees under me at the time, like immediately had to go hire them. Wow. And then also too, what people don't remember too, is during 2008, obviously the economy crashed, but then colleges boomed. So that $8 million account went to a $12 million account in 2 years. We expanded locations, we expanded all that stuff. So I got to kind of go.
You were responsible for feeding the kids all this terrible food.
Exactly. My idea.
The good steak profit was staying in the bank account. Yeah. They were getting the nasty cafeteria food.
Exactly. I mean, it's a crash course on like corporate business. I mean, at the time, Compass USA, I think, was the 4th largest employer in the world by bodies.
Damn.
because like they ran all the, you know, the food service accounts for airports, prisons, stadiums, like corporations, like every single college. So they were just a huge employer. So, I mean, I had directors above directors above directors above directors, and, you know, all this stuff, regional directors. And so it was like, again, like I said, it was just another, you know, 21 years old, 20 years old, just absolute crash course. And, you know, we're going to, it was literally like it just felt like The Office.
Yeah. So how long did you do that? And then what was the next opportunity?
Yeah. So I did that for 4 years. You know, and obviously, you know, I just gave it my all too, you know, and I started growing in the company, and then I not only just ran my account, I started picking up other accounts and stuff like that. I think by the end I had probably about $20 to $25 million worth of accounts under me at like 24.
Yeah.
And then they threw me on to the RFP crew, which means like someone who goes after new accounts. So all those state schools, you know, they have to put their company up to bid every 7 years to get to for free. I forgot like what the term is, but to make it fair to other industries. So it's just not one corporation's in there for 30 years. So they have to put up for bid. So every year there was a new school that we were able to go after. And I loved that. I loved going and trying to take an account from another competition. Like that, like I was trying to just push myself onto that team. So that's all I had to do, because that was fun. You know, we would have to go do a big presentation to the, you know, the board of the school, all that stuff. It was a blast. But then, so then it was 2012, I want to say, I got an opportunity from a mutual friend that we have, Casey Bard. And then that's when I joined the supplement company. So I was a graphic designer, then eventually turned the creative director of USP Labs. So,
and Casey Bard owns Tectocalories, and so he's the guy that makes our seasonings, our MKC Bighorn seasoning and Montexican.
Yeah.
Our spicy sea salt.
Then after that, worked for a fitness and outdoor company called Flagner Fail. That's run by Rob and Dana Lynn Bailey. That was a really fun time. You know, I mean, they literally live their life to the fullest. It's an absolute circus every single day.
For people who don't know, that's actually, well, I think when you started, it wasn't up here, but it's up in Montana now, up in Kalispell. But were they in Dallas? Is that where you were?
They were actually in Pennsylvania.
Okay.
So I moved up to Montana, you know, in 2014. 2014 going into 15. So that's, but I was still working for the supplement company at that time. But then Rob and Dana were always visiting out here. And we just through like just connecting online, we started like working together. I was like one of their first freelance people.
Okay.
And then once they moved out here, I was like, guys, you just got to bring me on full time. Hounded them until they did. And
What, when did you meet your wife then? Where along this path?
So I actually met her in Pennsylvania.
Okay.
Which is wild. So she's from Montana. She's from the Great Falls area. I met her while I was still working for the food service company. She was going to school out there. I met her literally just during a bar crawl.
Really?
And just hit it off, and like literally just no looking back since the day I met her.
Yeah.
So
that's
then,
awesome.
So then after that, like we actually moved to Phoenix for a year for her to finish up school, and then after Phoenix, we moved to Dallas.
Okay.
Yep.
I see. Yeah. And then what ultimately brought you to Montana?
So I've always wanted to move out to the Rockies. I've always wanted to move out in the middle of the mountains, because I think growing up in the Appalachian Mountains, like those are mountains, but you wanted big mountains.
Right.
You always wanted bigger mountains. And even when I was working for the previous companies, I was like always looking at the job boards. Is there a school popping up in Denver? Is there a school popping up in Utah? And like all that stuff. So, you know, eventually my wife and I, we were down in Dallas. You know, she was working at the Fort Worth County Hospital. I was working in downtown Dallas, and, you know, we just kind of like looked at each other and we're just like, you know, if we want to have kids, like we might as well have them up in Montana.
Right.
So, you know, we literally pulled out a map of Montana, and I said, hey, I want to live right next to a ski resort, and I want to be able to hike and hunt and like do all this stuff. So then we went and just circled all the different towns that we can do that. And we eventually just landed on Whitefish, Montana. You know, we put our house on the market, and 7 days later we were up here looking for a new house.
Wow.
Yeah.
Jeez. Crazy. And then she got a job working for the hospital up here then?
Yep. Yeah.
Very cool.
Yeah.
How long did you work with Flagner Fail?
So I was with Flagner Fail, I think it was like about 3 years, three and a half years.
Okay.
So I was I wore a ton of different hats because what a lot of people don't know is they have like 8 businesses.
Yeah.
They're very, very entrepreneur spirits. So I help manage a lot of those, not all 8, but I help manage all their kind of like their D2C stuff. Did a lot of photography, email marketing. And then, that's where, in a lot of just product launching.
Yeah.
And that's the one thread from the beginning of the supplement company to where we are today is like, that's the one thing I love doing is launching products. At the end of the day, like that's what I'm really, really good at, what I really, really find passion in. And, in the supplement, we were launching a new product every month.
Right.
If it was not a new flavor, it was a new product. And like, and when you're bridging that gap between wholesale and D2C, you only really have one chance to launch a product before then you have to ship it off to to your wholesalers, and then they get to do whatever they want to do with it. So we always put a lot of emphasis on that first batch.
Try to make a big hit on that first one.
Right.
Yeah.
All right. So, and
yeah, it's interesting because like some of that stuff I didn't even know, but yeah, the launching of the product thing makes sense, and it makes sense with what you're good at today.
Yeah. Yeah. And then, that's, that's what we kind of say is like, we kind of like built this model off of all the stuff I've already learned.
Right.
Of all the other mistakes I've already made.
Yeah. So that gets into, I had gone to Winter Strong out at Bert Soren's in South Carolina, and at that event was Casey. Mm-hmm. So I'd met him, and then there was another dude there, was not Austin. What was his name that knew you somehow through, maybe it was through Casey, because it was one of the video guys. It wasn't Ricky.
I think it may have been Austin. I think Austin Freeman or something like
maybe,
that.
Yes. Yeah. How did he know you?
I think he just
was
knew
it through Casey.
I think it was actually through Flagner. I think it was just like my reputation through like Flagner Fell and
I think you're right.
Stuff. Yeah.
I think you're right, because that's what he said. Because I was out there and I was saying I needed to build a website or do some content stuff, and they had, because it wasn't. I don't think it was Casey. It was Austin who had said that they and somehow he had a little bit of a connection to you, because I even think he maybe put us in touch. Mm-hmm. So I don't know how that exactly worked, but he said, well, I know a guy in Montana, and when you're in South Carolina and somebody says that, like a lot of times people will be like, oh, I'm visiting Montana next week, I want to stop by and say hi, and then you find out they're in Billings, and it's like, well, you're 5 hours from me, bud. Like if you want to drive over here,
a different state.
Yeah, exactly. Like you're just as close to be halfway across Washington.
Yeah.
And so, but sure enough, you were only a couple hours away, which in Montana terms is like,
groceries.
Drive down and say hi. So it was cool because I got a hold of you, and you came down to shoot some content. And at that time, you were also on the side at Flagner Fail. You were kind of starting your marketing side gig, right?
Right, exactly. Yeah, because I started that about a year before I left. So I was trying to like just do whatever I could just to kind of get independent.
Yeah.
Because
you kind of had plans on basically getting that business to a certain point where you could just start your own agency pretty much, right?
Mm-hmm. Right, correct.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I did that for about 2.5 months until someone gave me a good slip.
So I got a hold of Brandon, and you came down here, and it was cool because, you came down, took some photos. Mm-hmm. I kind of explained what I was trying to do. And what was cool is like you went home and then you sent me these photos, which were amazing. But then you also said, well, I can build a website. So you started sending me, I think it was maybe like homepage ideas or something like right off the bat. And like everything that you did right off the bat was like so cool. It was like exactly what I was wanting. Like I didn't have to explain or be like, that's not it. But like, I don't know how to make it. So I don't know how to explain. Like everything you did just seemed to like fall right in line of what I was like envisioning. What do you remember about those early first couple times?
Yeah, no, it was interesting. I remember receiving the first DM from you because I remember where I was sitting. It was like 5:30 in the morning or 6:30 in the morning on a Saturday.
Yeah.
Like, because the only reason why I remember that, because I remember sitting, because I just got coffee and I was going to go climb the mountain because it was in the middle of winter. So I was going to go tour up the mountain and just kind of ski down. And I remember getting the DM and just being, you just reaching out, like, yeah, I'll come down.
Yeah.
Let's see you. But I remember the first day, we came down, we shot a lot of foraging. So it was like a mix of like MKC and then also just helping, like with your personal page and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And then I think we did a second shoot, and like literally in between that shoot and there, like you literally built your garage.
Yep, exactly.
Yeah, it went from a 1-car garage to your full shop.
Yep.
It still didn't have concrete in the center. And then I think we did another big shoot that was a little bit more focused on those MKC prototypes.
Yep.
And that was enough to get us, I think, started to start building the website and things like that. And I think we were talking about the models and like colorways and like all those different things.
Yeah. Yeah, because I do remember, I don't remember the exact date. It's in my phone, but like basically like July 15th or something like that, 16th, you actually launched our website, because that was the first day one of Total Archery Challenge in Big Sky of 2020, which was COVID year.
Yeah.
Because I remember you texting, and I have the screenshots of our homepage on my phone, because you texted me and said your webpage is live, and then I went to it and then I took screenshots, and they were like, it was like 5:15 a.m.
Yeah.
Because I have the time-stamped screenshots, and so Jess and I went to that Total Archery Challenge event that day, and just walking around, just like going to try to make connections, essentially. And that's where we ran into Jessica Byers, who now works for us, Donnie Drake, and then like Isaac Ailman and John Dudley, and then, the whole TAC crew, Sean DeGray and the JP from Big Chino. They were super kind. I met Cole Kramer that day, and he declined to take a knife from me. It's very offensive, Cole. But throughout that summer, that's when we kind of started really working together more. You built the website, and we started working together, and it kind of got to the point where it was like, okay, this is definitely a fit. And I knew I couldn't really afford your agency. You were expensive. So we got to the point where we kind of started talking about partnership. And I think it was it about September that we partnered up officially?
Yeah, I think it was either late September or very, very early October. Yeah.
Because we had gone on Hank's bear hunt, and that was a cool, because Brandon called up and he was like, hey, I'm going to come down. Or I think I told you I was taking Hank bear hunting, and you were like, well, let's
turn into content.
Let's turn into content. I'll go with you and we'll shoot some photos. And I think both of us were kind of thinking like, we'll go walk around, we'll shoot some fake photos, probably not kill anything, and just go have a fun day. And that happens to be a day that Hank kills a bear, and it was like this epic adventure. Oh,
it was insane. It was so cool. And like it was just cool to watch Hank do it, and then to be able to document it. And it's so funny. I actually started looking back through those photos. You forget how small Hank was. So little.
I know, because now he's bigger than both of us by far, which is insane, because that was 4 years, three and a half years ago.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But that ended up being amazing, like, content for us, because we didn't have any actual hunting content at that point.
No.
But then, so we partnered up, and I still had a day job. And then when did you actually quit your flag job?
So I quit flag in the beginning of August. Okay. So like I had a thing that, like I said, like if I can put, X amount of times of my salary in a bank account, I'm going to quit. Because, I still had, Min and I were still married. And I just, there was a certain goal I wanted to hit, and I literally hit that goal. And I was like, boop, put my 2 weeks in.
Yeah.
And then, then the wild thing was like that agency actually started taking off like crazy. So when you gave me when we started talking about partnering up, I was like, okay, this would be cool, like side hustle, like,
right.
And to go back to like what my agency's name was is, I registered this, a long time ago when I lived in Texas, was Makers Creative. The whole point of it was, we talked about a little bit earlier in this conversation was like, I kind of always felt guilty selling supplements and like stuff like that, even though like they were changing people's lives, they got people out, they're definitely worth it, but it still felt like this weird consumerism that like, I wanted to help people who actually made things. Like that's what Makers Creative came from. Like the idea of it was like, I can go work with knife makers and go work with axe makers and go find people who make stuff, but that don't know how to sell it online.
Yeah.
And, I was even talking to, this lovely old lady or older woman out in Shoto, Montana, who was making these like heirloom grains. And I was trying to figure out how to like sell her grain online without getting killed on like shipping.
Yeah.
It just never worked out. The math never made sense. But, but that's where, that started to take off too, and I started, I think at the time, I had 7 different clients all on retainer. Like the one thing, just like, I don't think I ever even told you this, but to know when I know that MKC was real and like I knew it was going to be something. And I think it was about like December. It may have been after the first knife drop because I think we had one knife drop right before I got an offer for a software company that wanted my agency to be the onboarding for. They were like an AI pop up thing that just did really good at collecting emails. And then what they were going to use my agency to pretty much like use as a sell through to run people's marketing. Now that these companies have all these email like, lists, they need someone to manage it. And that my agency was going to take on all of their books. And I remember turning them down. And
really?
And it was a lot of money.
Yeah.
And I remember I remember almost wanting to puke.
Really?
But I knew that was the right decision because if I did that, there was no way I could have done MKC.
Right.
Like there was no way possible. And then like that meant also hiring 2 or 3 people to help manage that and everything like that. But no, it's a wild journey. Like, and that's what I always joke about. Like, watch out. Like your side hustle might turn into 55 employees, 6 CNC machines and a mortgage.
No shit. Well, and that's what, the one thing that I have learned, and I think had I launched this back when I had like originally thought of it in my early 20s, 19, 20, mid 20s, I think the mistake I would have made then is I would have tried to do it all.
Yes.
I would have tried to make the knives. I would have tried to sell them. I would have tried to have done everything. And I think I got to a certain point where I'd had enough life experience to realize that you just can't be everything. And I had seen enough companies out there, some fail and some really strong, but they had really strong teams. Mm-hmm. And so I think the smartest thing I did was realize that I didn't know that stuff. And then, got just totally lucky meeting you through just complete happenstance. But
yeah,
I think there's like being lucky, but then there's capitalizing on luck. And a lot of people, I think, might be really lucky and they don't know it because they never capitalize on it. Mm-hmm. Where offering you partnership in the company and having the trust to turn a ton of that stuff over to you and taking your advice and letting you run that stuff. And I still love to meddle in it a little bit, but understanding where your strong suits are, and then even like later on in the company history of like you and I both understanding what we don't understand, and then turning that part over to Andrew. Mm-hmm. Finding somebody like Andrew and being like, okay, you're going to run this. That's probably the best piece of advice I can give people who are starting businesses. It's like, well, first of all, you need to decide how big you want your business to be. Is it just a little small thing? Then it is probably smart to protect it and keep it all and don't give a piece of it away. Because if you give half your business away and then it only grows to a small thing, you don't have much to go on. It's pretty hard to pay bills. But if you want to grow a big company, you're either going to have to pay a lot of money to have a team help you, or you're going to have to let somebody jump on board and trust them to partner with you. And I mean, I got really lucky that it was you, because partnerships can go 2 different ways early on.
Right.
And ours just happened to be one of them that worked. But what do you remember about those first days, that first fall, and then like into that 2021 time frame when it was, like you say, when it was starting to become real?
Right.
What were your thoughts about like where MKC was headed and what it could be?
Yeah, I'm trying to figure out like when, like I feel like, and like I wonder what you remember. I remember the fall being us just trying to figure out how to sell the first 200 Blackfoots.
Yeah,
like it didn't matter how we sold them, because like there was even talk about us doing like private labeling, and then there was talk about us like jumping right in the wholesale. Like I guarantee if Shills came to us with a contract back then,
we'd have signed it.
We would have signed it in a heartbeat.
Mm-hmm. Well, that's how I originally thought. So I called the guy that was managing Bob Ward's here, and basically asked him if we could get our knives in there. Mm-hmm. And you and I had partnered up at that point. And I remember I called him, and it was like, well, we need SKUs on our boxes, and how, there was a bunch of questions, and it was pretty much like, you guys aren't really ready yet.
Yeah.
Like, call us when you're ready. Mm-hmm. And thank God that was the answer.
I know. I like, honestly, like it worked out. Like it completely, like there's a lot of a lot of things that are like, again, it's not luck, but we just, that's the thing about MKC that like kept on attracting me to, is like, there's just too many good parts about it. Like your backstory, like you can't even write a hero journey like that. Like that's like one thing that's absolutely invaluable. The name is absolutely invaluable. And then like, we'd even touch base on how fucking good the product is.
Right.
Like that's the one thing, you know, and we say that all the time, is like, I could sell anyone one knife, but the second and third knife, that's sold by the first product. That's sold by the experience of the product and all that stuff, and then buying into the brand. And I remember in the fall, the one thing I remember is like, okay, we're going to launch Speed Goats, and the goal was to launch Speed Goats right before Christmas, the first batch. And I remember like, okay, let's just do the drop model. Let's just build them up, and we'll release them on that Thursday.
Yeah.
And I remember a lot of friction, not between me and you, but just like any business that we had talked to, be like, why aren't you taking pre-orders?
Right.
Why aren't you taking pre-orders? Like, and then like towards the close of the week, we started getting like pressure from people like, hey, just let me buy one.
Right.
Just let me buy one. I just remember just being like, no, we got to trust the process. Just trust the process. Let them want it. And I remember the first drop, it was 14 minutes. And I think we never talk about drop numbers, but I mean, we had well over 100. And then,
yeah, because I would have ultimately probably made 200.
Yeah.
Because frankly, the place I was getting some of the like grinding done, that was their minimum. Which I remember was a big deal to me on the Blackfoots. When I cut the first Blackfoots in 2019.
Yeah.
In July or June. And I have the photos of that, of Hank and Macy snapping them out of the little, of the chunk of steel.
Yeah.
And so it was a year later that we launched our website, but that minimum of 200, I mean, I was making like one knife a month when I was a custom maker. So 200 to me was just insane. So we had to have had probably a couple hundred Speed Goats, but then by the time you get through the process, waste, and I know we had sent some out for marketing reasons and stuff like that. Yeah, it couldn't have been much more than 150.
Yeah. And I think the first person to get a Speed Goat bloody was Jim Miller. I literally think we sent it to him like the week before, and then like he texted us, hey, I got this in the mail. And then like literally 2 hours later, there's a picture like him and his two kids standing over a deer. Yeah. I'm like, okay.
Yeah. No, and actually Hank's bear that fall it's not even the same wrap. It was a different wrap that we were doing, but I have photos of that Speed Goat on the bear.
Yep.
And it was a different wrap, and it was a different color of paracord. But that was the first like quote unquote content hunt with a Speed Goat.
Right.
It wasn't lasered or logoed. Yeah, it's just crazy. It's crazy. And then the other thing that did, I think, help us was, even though you had kind of at that point quit your job, you did still have a job. So you had income coming in.
Definitely.
I was still a lineman, and I stayed doing lineman stuff until the end of that year. So January, 1st of 21 was when I'd finally quit. And then you still continued your marketing agency on for a little while into that next year, or probably maybe most of that year.
Yeah, pretty much up until like the end of that year.
Yeah.
Like clients started pittering off.
Right.
Like towards the end.
But I was like fully without income from January 1st until I think it was probably somewhere around June. We took our first paycheck, May or June.
Yeah.
First half of that year. And that for me was like a full on, like, I got about 6 months of money and then I'll be out.
Yeah. And I'm not gonna sugarcoat. I thought you were fucking nuts. when you called me, I was like, all right, this is real. Like, this is real.
Yeah. Trust me, I almost puked.
Oh, I bet. Because I remember when you called me, I was like, all right, we're in this. It's sink or swim now. Let's go.
No, it was. And it was literally because I needed one more day of vacation and I didn't have it. So it was, it was definitely like the drive home was like, man, what did I just do? And I knew my dad was going to be not pissed, but like terrified for me.
Yeah.
Because that lineman job, I mean, you're making 120 grand a year, benefits. It's fun work. Like, there's really not much bad about it except for some of the bosses in the office. It's a phenomenal job, especially in our area,
right.
And so But there was just something, and that was the credit to my wife, because she was the one like, you have got, I was trying to get that day off. I needed December 31st off when I was out of vacation, and I kept kind of haggling back and forth with my boss, and Jess just kept telling me every day, like, just quit. But I think she had more confidence in it than even maybe you and I did, just because I think she was a little more on the outside of it and seeing it, and I think she just knew we would figure it out.
Yeah.
I think she had confidence in you and your abilities. She had confidence in mine. But man, that first couple weeks, like, it was like, holy cow. But then, man, things just started rolling.
Yeah. And then I think we had our second drop. Like, I want to go check these dates. I think I'm pretty close. It was like January 18th. Like, we were able to make another set or something like that, or the remaining batch of those first speed goat. Like, we dropped again. That's the one I was really nervous on. I was like, the first one, like, okay, we can find 100 people to buy a knife.
Right.
The second time, like, now we need to go find another 100 people.
Yeah.
And I think that second one sold out even faster, because I remember calling you and just being like, what the fuck is happening? Because I think I dropped it when I was up in Kalispell, and I just remember Amanda being like, "Are there any knives left?" I was like, "They're all gone. They're gone." Like, but we all also touched back. Like the very first time we dropped the knives, like we didn't expect to sell them all.
No,
because like we didn't even buy enough.
We didn't have enough boxes,
and I think you were still sharpening them.
Yep.
Like, because I was packing and you were sharpening in the next room, and literally you were sharpening them, bringing them over to me, and I was packing them.
Yep. And then I had to drive to Walmart to buy more boxes.
Yeah.
And literally two different drops, I remember for sure, going into Walmart, and then it was messing up our shipping because they were the wrong size box from what we had put into the system.
We were buying little printers from Staples and trying to figure out the software to hook it up to print yeah, it was wild.
Yeah, and we were printing that in my in my mudroom in the house. Mm-hmm. Do you remember when we came out with our first T-shirt?
So it was the Bison Skull shirt.
Yeah.
I want to say, it had to be at least quarter one
of 21,
maybe the end of quarter one, because we had them for when Brandon, Lily, and Laura Zara were there to make the fingerprint blade. Like, that's when I shot them.
Yeah,
I remember shooting them. We had the first merch we ever had were the Brandon Bills hats that we're wearing now. Because I went back. That was one of the shoots that Riley did. We had beanies and hats, and then we did the Bison Skull shirt, the Speed Goat shirt, and then that Born to Work.
And was Mike working with you at your creative thing at that point?
Yeah, he was. Yes. So Mike was my number two.
Mike, for those of you that probably, most people aren't going to know Mike because Mike actually runs our website and does a lot of that stuff, but he lives out in Pennsylvania, so no one ever sees him on vlogs or whatever.
Right.
He's the ghost in the darkness. But Mike was working for you on your Maker's Creative, and Riley was doing a little bit of content stuff, right, for you, or just did it for us, or
yeah. So
I'm learning things.
No, totally. No, so Riley shot the very, very first Speed Goat video, and like your first little origin video. Remember, it was like 2.5 minutes long. I think it's still on YouTube. But Riley, I think he was working for one of the churches up in Kalispell, and I remember sitting down with him, and he's like, "Hey, how do I do this freelance thing?" And I laid it out for him, but I was like, "Well, I'll be your first client. Like, we'll make MKC your first client, you know?" And I was like, "I'll figure out, I'll just whatever you need." And I think we, paid him like $500 a month.
Yeah.
And he just came down and would just produce some of the best videos. And it's crazy how much better he's gotten too. Yeah. Since then. But I think he was only like 21 at the time or 22.
Yeah, he was a kid.
Yeah.
Yeah, Riley. And then I remember when this really got serious towards the end of 21 and you started to kind of offboard your Maker's Creative clients, and then you brought Mike over to the team. And, at that point we had Tristan working for us in the shop down here in Missoula. But then you brought Mike over. And so it's been cool because Mike, even though it sucks not having him here, because it's hard, to have him really feel like a part of the team, because he's not right here every single day, but he's literally been a part of the team from the very, very onset, literally day one.
Yeah, honestly, day one. Because and that's probably a whole nother podcast we could talk about, is setting up the marketing, the digital side of MKC. But Mike was absolutely crucial in building the foundation of what keeps MKC moving every single day.
Yep. Yeah, and it's so cool because now he's got people he's managing under him, and Riley's now full-time with us, working with Henry.
Yep.
There's a few people like that where it's like Mike's full-time now making a good living with us. Riley's full-time. Jessica Byers, who had met at that first TAC, is now full-time. Right. My own wife is full-time. Like, it's just these cool things that have happened along the way that we've been able to bring in. And what's it like to you knowing you got 55 employees that work for you?
It's insane. It's absolutely it's like to me, that's the thing I'm the most proud of, like hands down. And I didn't realize how proud it was until everyone kind of like mentions, like, like when someone asks me like, how's the business going? The first thing I say is like, we're up to 55 employees. Like, not how big our revenue is or how big our marketing, any weird marketing metrics, or, how much cash is in our bank account,
speed or whatever,
like any of that stuff. It's like, we built a big business big enough to, have 55 employees with like above industry average wages too. So it's not like we're just hiring
benefits
and everything. Like, they're 55 real jobs that I would have taken at any point.
Right. No, it's so cool. And then you see, it's really cool to me see how many of the employees like share our stuff on the weekends on their Instagram, and like they seem to really be proud to be a part of building what we're building. It's really cool to me, like seeing the development of like Tristan and Melissa, who have been here from day one and literally were kids. I mean, Tristan was in high school when we hired him, and he even took some risk of like sticking with us instead of going to college. And it's just cool seeing the development, and it's really cool, even seeing some of our employees buy houses and just do different like life things. Henry just had a kid. It's just cool seeing that all happen and know that like our company and our customers are providing that opportunity for people.
Right.
Yeah.
And like, that's like one thing, I always say, like every single knife drop, when I post that sold out thing, the last thing I always say is, you guys are bringing back American manufacturing one knife at a time. And literally these customers are. So like every single drop that we have is another reason to hire another employee. And that's the one thing is like, I don't know how much you brought this up on the podcast, but we had 12 employees last January.
Right.
We're at 55 now.
Right.
Like, we're over 40 employees hired in the last 12 months, which is just absolutely insane, especially in Missoula, Montana.
Well, I was just going to say that, especially where we're at, I don't know. It's not a place that feels like it's teeming with tons of really, really good jobs. I mean, a lot of people want to live here. There's not a lot of industry here. In fact, when I moved here, there was a huge paper mill right here on the edge of Frenchtown, Smurfit Stone. Probably had at least 300 or 400 employees there at that time. It was maybe down in the 200s, but at one time I think it was over 500.
Yeah.
That was active in 2002 when I moved here, and I think in like 2007 or 8 it shut down. All those people lost those jobs. There was a huge lumber mill out in Bonner when I moved here that had another 400 people working there. It shut down. There's been a lot of industry. The logging mills in the surrounding area have shut down. Like, there's been a lot of industry go away.
Yeah.
And so that's probably the thing I'm most proud of is the fact that we're building something where we're actually bringing those jobs back. And if it allows people, Frenchtown graduates, we have several of them working for us, be able to stay in their hometown where they want to stay and raise families, like that's really cool versus having to move away because it's expensive here.
Oh, absolutely. Or even just like, I had like a Zoom chat with my little brother-in-law. My brother-in-law is only 16, but he had me pop up for their career day. I was talking to all the kids in like the Dutton, like not just the high school, but like, all 12 of them from the high school to the middle school.
Yeah.
And they were just asking questions. I was like, guys, like, you could literally come here and work and start at a certain wage and make a really, really good living if your route isn't to go to college and go, be a doctor or a lawyer and all that stuff. And just getting them to understand that, and they don't have to leave the state. They can only, that's a 2.5 hour drive. They're still close enough to family, all that stuff,
I think it's also really motivating for those kids to see that, like, a knife maker from a tiny town of like Lincoln was able to start something like this and grow a big company. So like your hobby, if you tie flies or you do whatever, you paint cars, you like to restore cars or whatever that hobby is, you're an artist of some kind, you know, it's possible out there to actually turn it into something that's bigger, and actually make a living out. Even if you don't have 55 employees someday, if you just make a living out of it yourself, it's possible.
Yeah. And you and I talk about that all the time too, is like how big do you actually want your company? Like you can plan that. You know what I mean? Like us, like we have a goal. Like we want to be the largest or the best, you know, American-made knife company in the country. Like that, there's a certain bar that we have to hit. You know, but like you said, like, you know, there, you know, some people they're just super happy just being custom knife makers or like, you know, semi-custom, you know, doing product runs and stuff like that. But that also goes for axes. That goes for, you know, cutting boards. That goes for, you know, like there's so much opportunity out there, and the market is changing. Like that's the one thing is like you don't just have to buy your stuff from Walmart and Target and, you know, all these big box stores and stuff like that. Like you can set up your own, you know, your own e-com store. You just need to like, and honestly now it's only going to get easier and easier with AI. Yeah. You know?
Yeah. That's an interesting thing that I've said to a lot of people, like people kind of shit on Instagram, social media and whatnot, but it's also probably the most powerful marketing tool that mankind's ever known, and it's free. Like you think about when you were in college and how hard it was for you back then. If they'd have said launch Montana Knife Company as a college kid to get the word out to 300 million Americans plus people on the other side of the globe, that challenge back in 2004 is entirely different compared to 2024. 20 years later, the world is wide open.
Oh, 100%. Like you can, you know, you can literally reach as many people as you want on Instagram. You know, it might just take time and effort versus, like you said, 2004, you know, I used to sit down with, you know, or would be 2004, but 2008 still, 2008, 2010, I would sit down with magazine publishers and they're like, how big of a company do you want to be? And then they had the price tag because they had the keys to the eyeballs. So it's like, you're gonna get the number one supplement, the number two this. You're gonna have 6 pages plus editorials and all 8 magazines, and then you know, here's your booth size at the Olympia. Here's this, and like you can literally buy the size of the company that you want. If you want to be presented as number one company, you can actually do that.
The challenge now is, you have access to the entire world, but so does everybody else.
Right.
So how do you cut through?
Yeah.
How do you actually get seen, get noticed? You said it a little bit ago. It's like, I think it's in our control to make the best knife company in the world. It's in our customers' control if we become the biggest.
Right.
You know, if you try to be the biggest, you're probably going to make decisions that ultimately cost you being the best.
Right.
And it's like, I don't necessarily care if we're ever the biggest per se, because that can be measured a lot of different ways, and it can be kind of funky there. But I think if we're the best, we're going to be big enough. Now, that could be number 1, it could be number 2 or 5. I don't know what that is, but we still have a ways to go to get that best title. I think there's a lot that goes into that, and that's subjective, but we're going to definitely do our best to try to be that, you know. What was your, what's one thing that surprised you in launching Montana Knife Company? Like, what's been your biggest surprise or something that you've learned that you maybe didn't know before 2020?
You know, obviously, like Montana Knife Company, like as you're growing a company, like there's a lot of self-development that goes into, you know, growing a company, especially being one of the owners and stuff like that, like managing people, managing yourself, managing like, that's the biggest thing that I'm realizing like over these past like 3.5 years is more of like the personal development stuff. You know, cause like before, you know, I kind of had this whole like Tim Ferriss kind of mentality of like, I want to build the smallest company with the most revenue and make it as simple as possible. And there's nothing wrong with that. I mean, there's a lot of people doing very successful stuff like that, but like how we're doing it is like, you can't. Like you can't keep it simple. Unfortunately, like there's just no way to keep American manufacturing simple. That's why it's really hard to do. So, just kind of like sitting in that and realizing like you can't fight it. Like we have to hire engineers, and then we have to hire people to support the engineers, and then we have to buy CNC machines, and then we need to buy the machines that support the CNC machines.
Right.
And then people, like it's not, coming from the marketing world, everyone wants to just do the marketing side, but then it's also to realizing that like I have to help in on like the business development side and growing employees, and like,
You have to work with the production side.
Yeah, work with the production side, and then all the bank meetings and all the tax meetings and like all that stuff, which is it's been an absolute blast. Like these past 3 years have felt like a year.
Right.
I wouldn't have changed a single day of it. It's just been just an absolute blast.
Right. Yeah, that has definitely been to me the biggest judgment of like going from like, not that we're not normal people, but like normal people, you're doing your job, you're doing your thing, and then you're thrust into this, like you're still the marketing guy, but then you're also the vice president, and you're also, like you say, sitting on board meetings and sitting on finance meetings and tax and like all these hats that all of a sudden you're handed that you have to wear that like, that wasn't in part of our talks in 2020. Like that's not the thing you're thinking about. You're just thinking about, I was thinking how to make a knife, and then you were thinking how to sell it.
Right.
And that was it.
Yeah.
It was that simple.
Yeah.
It was, yeah, it's just crazy how much that stuff changes. What keeps you from deciding just like, okay, we've grown a pretty big company, you could put some money in your pocket. Why don't you sell it?
That's a good question. I mean, honestly, like right now, because like we don't even have a question of where the ceiling is, and like this is the chance to like just make history. I mean, literally, I mean that's what we're doing right now. Like no one has done it like we're doing it. No one has grown this fast. There's tech companies that grow this fast, and there's like SaaS companies that grow this fast, and there's but doing it with like American manufacturing and hiring people and like literally making the products downstairs. We've obviously seen, companies that manufacture in China grow this fast, but like you don't see it happen here in the United States. So we're setting the example that like in 3 years, to go from 3 years to like 55 employees and like the top line that we're doing and making it respectful and profitable at the same time, like this is the one chance.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like I want to see how like awesome we can make this company. Like I don't want to keep on saying big, because our goal isn't to make it the biggest company, but like let's take it to as far as we can and see how many people's lives we can actually affect and change with us growing this company. Because like, again, like I said, every knife we sell is a reason to hire another person.
Yeah. Yeah. You think about it, how many companies, basically design their own product, like invent whatever they're going to make, design it, think about it, design it, engineer it, prototype it, test it, produce it, market it, and ship it.
Right.
And warranty it.
Yeah. All of it
under one roof. Like name the amount of companies that do that.
Exactly.
They're very few. Very, very few. I think of like Sornex with Bert Sorn, or maybe Origin, with what, Jocko and Pete and those guys are doing. It's hard for me to think of many more.
There really aren't, especially like in our space, because the second that like they see the demand, most people would have just jumped on, we can kind of make and assemble in America and we'll get everything produced overseas. Like,
right. Or make it and then ship it to somewhere else to be distributed.
Right.
We're not going to worry about fulfillment.
Yeah.
Or we're going to have engineering done outside. I mean, we're even inventing, with our engineer, we're inventing processes and engineering and manufacturing processes to manufacture.
Yeah.
Our stuff. I mean,
which is the cool stuff. Seeing our engineer team like literally invent robots or
turn the machines into robots. Yeah. No, it's bonkers. Well, cool, man. It's been a long time coming on here. I am very thankful that you got on board and took the leap of faith when you did. I think it's been, we have little bumps here and there or whatnot, but I don't know how you wouldn't have struggles and difficulties and bumps along the way with what we've built and how fast we've moved and how fast we've come. And for us to stay together, do this, and then build our team the way we've built it. And that's the piece I get the most. And I even told the team last week, that's the piece I get the most, I can get super stressed out and super worried and be like, oh my God, like, how is this going to keep going? What gives me peace and calm is like when you look at our team and you see all the pieces that we have, whether it's all the pieces that you have on the marketing side and all those guys, you know, the pieces upstairs here with Andrew and our finance side, and then everybody downstairs producing, plus our engineers and CNC people and manufacturing. Like, that's the part. It's like, oh, we've got good, like, this is all in good hands, and we're just getting started.
Right.
You know, but it's been a really fun ride, and to be doing it in the outdoor space where we get to go hunt.
Oh, that's the best part.
Yeah.
Yeah. And you know, and like, seriously, I couldn't thank you enough for the opportunity. I mean, like, literally, like, you know, you changed my life, you changed my family's life, like everything, just, you know, and just having the faith in, you know, yourself, having your faith in myself and like everything like that. Like, there's a lot of times where I'm just like, like I said, like, this could be a cool side hustle. And there's times where I look over to you and you're like, no, we're fucking going.
Yeah.
Let's do this. So I was like, hey man,
well,
we're doing it.
it's been mutual, and we've both affected and changed each other's lives. And there wouldn't be any way MKC'd be where it would be without you, and you wouldn't be running a knife company without me. So it's pretty cool the way that it's all worked out. And it, like you say, to be making something and to have this many, it's like, I hate to even call them employees, but family members that that are helping support us, and we're helping support them. But what's the most exciting is where we're headed.
Oh, it's insane. That's
the part where it's hard to even get across to people to understand, like, the conversations we have, the things that we see on the horizon, the plans that we talk about that we can't share. Like,
just say folder.
Brandon wants a folding knife really bad to sell. I don't even feel like it's fair, because you're not even going to have to do anything. You're just going to be like, here it is.
Look,
it'll be gone. Yeah, there's your marketing. Yep. Here it is.
What's it called? Folder.
It's a folder. That's all you guys need to know. No, man, I appreciate it, and I'm glad to get you on here, and let's freaking keep rolling.
Yeah, hell yeah. I definitely think we need a part 2.
Yeah,
I think like a good part 2 of like talking about the first and second year, like really break that down for people and let them kind of follow in our footsteps and possibly learn from some of the mistakes we made and stuff like that. But there's definitely some things that, like, I think we need to document this more as we go like forward. Just because like you said, like, some of the conversations we were having this morning were like, man, we just need to like write it down that we had this conversation. So in 12 months we can say, told you so.
Yeah. I swear a lot of our meetings should be in front of these microphones, just private, just like recorded private. 'Cause I did literally just say that to you. Like, a lot of the things we stress about and are trying to figure out, like, we still, like, people don't understand, like, we still don't know what we're doing.
Right.
'Cause like we're like, well, do we do this or do we do that? And, you know, all these different moves that we think about making, but the only way to know what the right move was is to do it.
Right.
And then look back and try to analyze it in the moment, try to analyze it looking back. But yeah, it's wild, because that's the other thing. I think people sometimes get paralyzed by analysis by paralysis. So they don't do anything.
Right.
So it might have been a little reckless for me to just bail off and, quit my job. But I personally it really was the confidence in what you were doing, because I had confidence in myself. Like, I knew I would figure it out. Like, and that's more the manufacturing side. Like, I didn't know what I was doing back then, but I was going to figure it the hell out.
Right.
I had no doubt that I would find the answer, find the way, like, find the people. I will figure that shit out. So once I knew I was fully confident you had that side. We could have just analysis paralysis that thing for 2 more years and talked about it, and well, the manufacturing's not perfect, so we're not going to do this or that. And that's where some people need to understand, like, at a certain point you have to take not a reckless leap, but you have to take a small step, and then the next day take another small step.
Yeah, and I think what it's coming down to, like, we both talked about this, like, we're not very cerebral people. I think our gut runs more of our our motion than like our actual brain does.
Yep.
And I think that's maybe what makes us such a good team and why we're moving so fast is because we don't have someone actually smart being like, hey, that's
not a good idea. Yeah.
We're like, but our gut says that.
Yeah, and I think the further we go along, then you add people like Andrew,
right?
Or you add people like Jason.
Jason's great. Like that doesn't math. Well, okay,
all right. But that gut feel, like that whole trust your gut saying is a saying for a reason. Like, it really is. We trusted our gut a lot. Now we also made, I would say, very light gambles. We didn't do anything either that was insane because people were complaining about us not having knives on our website and all this stuff, and even today. But in that first month in December before I'd even quit my job, we could have just gone and cut 30,000 blades and gone and borrowed. I could have gone and borrowed all the money to do it, but if it didn't go right, it would have just killed the whole thing.
Right.
So being satisfied to take it a little slower, that's one thing. As fast as we've grown, I think we've both been really good also about just being like, you know what? Then we're just going to be out.
Right.
Like if this goes well, we're going to just be out.
Mm-hmm.
And, we've had business people say, God, you could have made this much more money. You could have done, yeah, but that was the calculation and the risk we were willing to take. And if it didn't go well, we could still maybe survive it and pivot and keep going, but versus just killing it.
Right.
But I think a podcast on those early days would be really good to just talk about like those baby steps.
Right. Like how did we really, like grow our Instagram and like what were those things that like, because we didn't have even anything to sell the first year. You literally go back and look at our data. It's like, we had like 8 drops maybe. Like, how do we fill our time? I need to go back and look at that because I remember that was like one of the big struggles. Not to even start jumping into the second podcast, but it was like there was a lot of factors that were very uncommon in growing a business.
Yeah.
That we tackled really, really well. And we were actually, that's the one thing, like we gave back our first year.
Yeah.
When most people are, looking for scraps or has their hands out.
Right. Yeah. And we also on the production side we couldn't do it all. So then we went and found people that could do it for us, people, if you're saying, well, I can't build, I can't build recurve bows because I don't have this bow press. Okay, then find somebody that does have and pay them to do it. Like find a good supplier, find a good shop that can do something for you. So, you can't just open Montana Knife Company on day one and have 55 people. You know? So how do you eat that elephant one bite at a time and just start building it? And the other thing that I think we were smart on too is you didn't see us go blow tons and tons of money on then like cool guy shit.
Right.
We just reinvested and kept reinvesting in the right thing.
Yeah. No, that's the truth is like, we've been very like almost growing Montana Knife Company is cooler than like some of the fringe benefits.
Yeah.
Yeah. That most people get, when they're 2-3 years in. Like I'd rather buy another CNC machine right now.
Yeah.
than a Porsche.
Right. Yeah. No shit. Yeah, it is. It's interesting. It's I don't know. It's been a blast, and it'll be. I tell people too, and we tell our employees all the time, like even this building we're in, we go tour people through my other little shop right next door. 5 years from now, we're going to come bring a bunch of employees out and tour this building, and everyone's going to be like, how did you make knives in this little tiny ass building?
Right.
We're still actually like, we're having this podcast and what's someday going to look like still the beginning days, first 5 years of the company, which is wild to think about. If you look at Nosler and they're 120 years old, it's crazy.
Yeah.
But, well, cool, man.
Awesome.
I appreciate it.
Yeah, I appreciate it.
If people want to follow your personal page, what's your Instagram?
It's just my name, Brandon Horoho. I'm on Instagram, and I just joined X.
Oh, nice.
So if you're on Twitter, come find me. But there, or just on the Montana Knife Company page. I'm still in there, still posting daily. So
awesome. Well, good work.
Yep.
Let's keep it rolling.
Awesome. Thanks, Josh.
Yeah.